Hi. Today I want to talk about Japan, one of my favorite countries, which I visited in May for 3 weeks. And previously, 2-3 years prior, I visited Japan as well for 2-3 weeks as well. And I want to talk about what I enjoyed, what I didn't enjoy so much, what I find kind of weird. In no shape or form am I an expert on Japan, so please take everything that I say with a grain of salt, but still, I think I did make some observations which maybe are valid or relevant or interesting to you. And I always like to look at behaviors and sociology and the big picture, the abstract, the culture. And yeah, maybe you have a different opinion or you have a similar opinion or experience. In any case, I want to emphasize that overall I really love Japan. As a tourist, I really enjoy spending time there. It's one of my favorite countries for sure. And I'd love to go back at some point. But still there are some aspects as well that I don't love so much, obviously. And I want to talk about all of these, but mostly about the positive, I guess. So I would say let's start with the video. Okay, so I thought I would kind of structure the video a bit, and I would start with cost, which is a positive to me, because I noticed that in general our vacation was surprisingly affordable almost. Sure, the flight from Zurich to Tokyo, that's the most important, the most expensive part in a way, that was more than $1,000. But I think all in all, for the 3 weeks, we maybe spent $3,000, $4,000, which is a lot of money, of course. But I had expected to spend more because everybody says, oh, Japan is so expensive. And I don't really get why they have this opinion. Maybe that's also for me coming from the most expensive country in the world, Switzerland. But all in all, I would say it's quite affordable in a way. I mean, it's not like Thailand or, I don't know, a smaller Vietnam or smaller countries in this area. But what's crazy is you can really buy a great meal for 800 yen, which is like $5 or something, which is impossible in Switzerland. And even in Germany and France, it's impossible. And in the US, it's impossible for sure. And maybe also the foreign exchange rate is pretty advantageous in my case. But what was crazy is that the prices from the last time I was there, like, I don't know, 2019 or something, haven't really changed that much. And you can really see there's not much inflation also. So it was pretty crazy. I mean, if you go to, again, a solid restaurant, you might only pay 800, 900, 1,000 yen. You can, of course, always spend much, much more, but you don't have to because the food is excellent anyways. If you go to a small convenience store, you might only spend like, I don't know, $3 to actually fill your belly. And the same goes for many other things. Hotels were also pretty fairly priced, I would say. We didn't go to fancy hotels, but like a solid, smaller hotel room, even in Tokyo, could be $40, $50 per person per night, which is, I think, really fair. And of course, if you go to like ryokans and fancier places, you can spend much, much more. But in general, even hotels, we booked them beforehand, were quite affordable. Public transport, also really fairly priced, I would say. We had in Tokyo a ticket for 3-4 days, which only cost like $5, $6, and we could drive everywhere. It was crazy, maybe $10, I don't know, but really fairly priced. The same goes for museums, onsens, any kind of touristy stuff that you could do. I never had the feeling that I got ripped off here, as opposed to Paris or something, or many other places. In Japan, you just never feel like people are ripping you off. Even if you're at the biggest tourist place, you can grab some nice snacks there, and it's normally and quite fairly priced actually. So that's awesome. Same goes for the train that we took. There's obviously the famous Shinkansens and the JRE, Japan Railway Express. We kind of missed booking the Japan Railway Pass in advance, so we had to buy them right at the train stations. but still we only paid like, I think $300-400, and we really took the train quite a bit from Tokyo to Kyoto to Osaka to Kobe to many other places all around, and even to the south near Fuji, and then back, and it was really fairly priced and affordable, I would say. And yeah, I think everything is pretty fairly priced. I have like this weird feeling that capitalism isn't so greedy and rampant in Japan. Clothes are amazing. You have tons of secondhand stores where I like to shop. I have to say, however, the Japanese, for some reason, they really are fans of some brands which are Carhartt and Polo Ralph Lauren for some reason, and Champion and Patagonia maybe. Those brands are actually quite expensive for some reason, but other than that, it's really fairly priced as well. You can, it's amazing for shopping as well. So yeah, obviously if you want to, you can spend a lot of money, but I don't know where this trope comes from that Japan is really expensive. It's really not, and you can even have amazing Kobe beef for a reasonable, solid price. Maybe we just really didn't do the super fancy stuff, but if you don't want to spend the money, you can eat excellent, sleep in good hotels for much less than even in Europe, I would say, nowadays. So this is the first thing that I thought was amazing. All right, point number 2, that's gonna be the food. I know it's a bit cliche, but the food in Japan is excellent. You can really just eat everything, drive around, go to the most random small restaurants under like a train station, and everything is gonna be good. I think everything that I tasted was excellent, honestly. I don't want to oversell it here, but really it's surprising. It's also a bit different than as opposed to maybe what you thought Japan would be, because one thing you have to know is that everything is meat, basically. So my girlfriend is a vegetarian, and we really, similarly to last time, we really struggled finding vegetarian choices, but sometimes she just didn't, she just took some rice or whatever with something simple, and maybe it becomes a bit better. But honestly, Japan might be one of the worst countries if you're a vegetarian or vegan. So that's something that you have to know. Even if you're at a sushi place, there, sure, that's usually possible to find vegetarian stuff, but in general, it's gonna be really hard. So yeah, in any case, I tried as much food as I could. I don't know if I can remember most of it, but soba noodles and udon noodles, that's like the thicker ones. Ramen many times. I had different type of sticks, and okonomiyaki, I think it was called, which is some kind of like cabbage thing. I had different meat sticks. I had Kobe beef and Wagyu beef. I had tonkutsu. I don't know, this was just kind of like a schnitzel or something, and many other things that I forgot the names of, obviously sushi and the stuff that you know, but everything was excellent. I don't know what to tell you. Even when you go to some random mall, it's gonna be excellent. Again, if you go to the most shabby looking place, it's gonna be excellent, and if you're at a touristy place, it's gonna be excellent too. And this is something I find amazing about Japan. Sometimes there's stuff you don't even taste it before, even all the mochi stuff, this kind of like rice ferment. I don't know what it is exactly, but it's Reisstärke, we say in German. They have a lot of different, like, texture is very important to them, and flavor is very important to them. They don't really love spicy so much, I feel like, but in many cases they have very mushy texture mixed with harder texture. I mean, just watch Food Wars or something to maybe realize how seriously they take their food. I feel like Japanese have a lot of pride about their food. They take it very seriously. And even if you watch like Paulo in Tokyo or something, if you watch like restaurants, you will see how careful they are with how they make their food. So even in the convenience stores, which the Japanese call konbini, like 7-Eleven, Lawson, Family Mart, and so on, Daily Daikutse or something is one of them. I did my best to try everything, even all the desserts, all the different small rice bowls. and they were good too. I mean, I never taste something that didn't taste excellent actually. And yeah, I mean, if you go to Japan, I can just urge you, don't just stick to what you know, try new stuff. Even those small like octopus balls, they're amazing. Or you can get meat in all kinds of variations. They like fish a lot too, but I mostly had beef and chicken, I think, and pork and whatever. The food is amazing in Japan. It's awesome. I still miss it. And what's crazy is even like desserts where you think this is gonna be gross, like some kind of waffle in a 7-Eleven, and then you taste it, it's completely different. It's like really squishy. There's chocolate inside. It's amazing. It's I can't even describe it. I mean, don't have too high expectations, but again, the prices are pretty fair and the taste is just amazing. What I think is good is also they don't always have huge portions. They have more reasonable portions, but it's almost always tasty. I have 2 or 3 small gripes with the food. First of all, again, for vegetarians, it's a nightmare, and I mean, honestly, nowadays, I think it's better to maybe cut back a bit on the meat and don't overindulge so much on the meat. It's just my personal opinion, but looking at the environment and how expensive having meat is, maybe you can cut it back a bit on it. The second part is there's not that much vegetables actually in salad, so after a while I did miss vegetables a bit because I eat quite a lot of it. And so I think they could have a bit more of it. I don't want to tell the Japanese to change their ways at all, but if you really love your vegetables in your salads, you might miss something eventually. And the last point, but that's maybe a small detail, the plastic waste, which is insane. I mean, especially when you think about supermarkets, everything is packaged like a million times. It's crazy how much food, like plastic waste, you're gonna have just having some kind of sushi, because your cutlery is gonna be packaged 10 times, and the sushi is gonna be packaged 10 times. You're gonna get a plastic bag. They love to wrap everything in plastic that they can possibly wrap in plastic, so that's a bit unfortunate. But again, food, awesome. Try as much as you can is my recommendation. Okay, number 3, I would like to talk about the cities in Japan a bit. And in general, I gotta say, I like them a lot. I cannot say that I've seen like a broad array of cities, but this time we visited again Tokyo, Nagano actually, Kyoto. We went to some kind of like samurai valley. We went to some smaller places too, like Kamakura and Koyasan, I think, yeah, which was like some small Buddhist village. We were like in a bit of a touristy town, Magome, I think, and in Osaka, and we wanted to go to Kobe, but I'm not sure if we went actually. I'm pretty bad with the city names. But in any case, we were kind of like in this. Then we actually went to the beach, to a southern town near Fuji, Mount Fuji. So we went to smaller towns and bigger towns, and I gotta say, I like Japanese cities and towns. I mean, obviously Osaka, it's pretty crazy, and Tokyo even, I think that's the biggest city in the world, right? If you just look at the city itself, I think 14 million people live there. And if you take the wider area, it's even 30 million or something. It's insane. But because the people are quite quiet and polite and not loud and intrusive, I never felt like really anxious like I sometimes do in bigger cities. I really enjoy it, especially the smaller cities. I think if I go back to Japan, I would like to go to smaller cities because I do prefer it. Even Nagano, that's pretty small, like there's mountains around. It's not like even a city like Nagano, you're not necessarily gonna always have beautiful buildings. So if you expect everything to look like in some anime or in Sekiro or something, some video game, you're gonna be disappointed unless you go to maybe Kyoto, which has a lot of these old houses still and temples, or Koyasan or something. But you could obviously argue if a city like Tokyo or Nagano is a bit of an urban hell as well. All the concrete, it's just so vast. Or even Osaka, so many huge buildings, so many skyscrapers. For me, as a European, it's a bit overwhelming, to be honest. But still, in a way, I feel like it has a bit of a 90s vibe, especially Osaka has like this crazy shopping district with like huge crabs and everything and octopus. And to me, it has a bit of a cyberpunk vibe, and I love it. Some of the houses are a bit run down, to be honest. But the vibe and everything feels a bit nostalgic to me, even though I haven't really been to Japan as a kid. It feels a bit of a 90s vibe. Maybe that's where they had like their big up and coming time, which historically is true. I think a lot of the buildings were built in the 80s and 90s. Maybe that's where the biggest wealth in Japan was generated. And this is why a lot of things in Japan feel a bit nostalgic. What I also love about Japan, it's very clean, it's very safe, it's well organized, I would say, in general. You can find whatever you're looking for. It's logically organized. You have like some shopping malls and everything. But yeah, what I want to point out is it's beautiful. You can also find like the picturesque, beautiful Japanese mountain villages that you maybe are expecting from some animes or whatever. But even the big cities, which are a bit scary in a way, kind of urban hellish, I like them, I enjoy them. Because again, I don't know, I like the retro vibe and I never feel too exhausted by the people because they're quite quiet and friendly, and or not friendly necessarily, service oriented, but also respectful. They're very, very respectful. At the same time, I do have to admit, sometimes I do feel a bit overstimulated in Tokyo, especially just because there's so many people. When you go out on a weekend, like like obviously if you go to Shibuya or something, sometimes it's just no matter where you look, there's people and there's crowds everywhere. And no matter how polite people are, it's just gonna be a bit too much. And especially when it gets pretty hot as well. There's also some aspects about Japanese cities which I found a bit too much. You hear noise all the time in a way. Sometimes in some stores, like there's this camera, Yobadashi or something it's called. And all the time you're gonna hear some song like ba 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 ba. You're gonna hear this all the time, like from different speakers, and there's like voices coming from all directions and different sounds layering on top of each other. So on the one hand, the Japanese are very quiet and respectful. On the other hand, they blast you with advertisements in some stores, which is a bit too much. And also these pachinko stores where you're like playing video games and people really go out on a Saturday to play on their own on some chair in like a dusty building. It kind of looks like a casino or something, and they play these games. I think that's a bit much. But yeah, in general, I would say the cities are cool. If you're a tourist, don't only go to Tokyo or something, rather go to maybe smaller cities. Check out Kyoto, definitely, but also try to find some niche cities. I don't know, probably any city you want to go to. Go there, check it out. The nature is beautiful as well. I think there's something I kind of forgot to say, but wherever we could, we tried to do hikes as well. We were always kind of scared of the black bears because apparently they're everywhere. But nature in Japan, beautiful. Really recommend it. Again, super clean. Very high variety as well. They have high mountains. You can go skiing, which I didn't do there. You can go hiking really well. And it's awesome. For me personally, I would really like to go to the south as well, or kind of like the North Island. That's stuff I would enjoy doing. Maybe not necessarily be in the big cities again, because honestly, Tokyo, it's a bit too big for me. Okay, number 4, Japanese people doing their own thing. Maybe that's a bit of a weird category, but I think this kind of summarizes what I love about Japan the most. And this was probably because the country was pretty closed up for the longest time, for the Edo period and even afterwards, up until like after the World Wars. The country was so closed that they basically developed their whole own value system and culture, and there are really some fundamental things they do differently. Of course, Japan has nowadays McDonald's and Starbucks and everything, but other than that, I feel like they really do everything on their own and a bit differently. Almost everything they do is a bit different in a way. Almost every product that you see, like in some kind of convenience store, or even like a big store, is made in Japan. It's not from some other surrounding country. I mean, some stuff is manufactured in China probably, and a lot of the fashion comes from the US, which they seem to love. But in general, they have so much in-house like manufacturing as well, it feels like. Every product you could imagine, not only obviously the big brands like Sony, but even all the stuff that you can think of, like all the electronics, but also the other stuff, all the furniture, all the stuff is manufactured in Japan and with a lot of precision and attention to detail, which I love. But I'm not only talking about this, I'm also talking about other aspects, like everywhere in Japan you will find bidets. So basically, even if you're on some hiking trail, you go to some random toilet house, it's gonna be looking beautiful maybe, but the toilet will have a bidet included, and not only that, it's gonna have a button for some sounds, and it's gonna have different bidet functions, one for men and one for women. It's gonna have a heated seat and everything, and that's so crazy, and I love it, to be honest. And something else, music. I feel like Japan is a very musical country in a way. In Tokyo or in other cities, at every train station you're gonna hear some jingle, and a different jingle even, and I love them. They're sometimes really creative and actually kind of deep, and that's something I love about Japan, Japanese art. Really, the music is 50% of what I love about it. You can take the Ghibli movies or anime movies or some kind of video games. The music is almost too good. Even like Zelda, Breath of the Wild, there's some, the soundtrack, if you listen to it, I listen to it a lot while working, it's really deep and it's creative, and the harmonics, they're too good actually for this use case. And there's something else, there's a kind of mediocre game, I would say, like a strategy game, which I play called Triangle Strategy. It's pretty good, it's by Square Enix. But it's not, it's kind of like Final Fantasy Tactics. But some of the music, the score is so excellent. One is called Battle March. It's a mix between like a battle march and some kind of ballad and some kind of dance. And you have a full orchestra, and it's really one of the best songs that I've ever heard in a way, because it's also very intricate. It's like a Swiss knife or something opening up like a Rolex watch or a Patek Philippe. That's the music of the Japanese. A lot of jazz influences, and I don't know, I love it. I just think music is really important in Japan. The same obviously goes for the food. The same goes for all these convenience stores there's everywhere. And the same goes also for how polite people are with you and bow all the time and this kind of stuff. And everything that the Japanese do might be a bit different, and that's great. However, in some cases, I think this can be a detriment as well, if I'm really like honest with you. One stuff that's weird about the Japanese, I think they decided at some point that trash bins, they don't need them anymore. I think they basically said maybe it's because of terrorism or some shit, because even though they don't really have terrorists there. But they decided to get rid of all the trash bins. So basically, honestly, if you're in Tokyo, you're not gonna find a trash bin unless you're in some convenience store. You have to carry around your trash with you in your backpack. The funny thing is, the Japanese are such a obedient people that you're never gonna find any trash on the street, at least by Japanese that they left it there. If it happens, it's probably tourists. But it doesn't mean that this is a good idea still. It would be good and convenient to have a trash bin. It just doesn't exist, so you end up carrying your trash all day long. So that's one thing that's kind of weird. And I'm thinking, okay, if people are so adaptable and just follow orders so well, you can obviously abuse this power as well to do some weird stuff. What's something else that's weird? The fact that they wrap everything in plastic is a bit too much, I think. It's really terrible for the environment. The fact that they eat so much meat is kind of weird. The fact that women are weirdly sexualized, very young schoolgirls actually is pretty weird. The fact that women actually don't really have that many rights, and it's a pretty patriarchal society still, where it's really hard for women to have a career, something I don't love either. But that's mixing up different things now. I don't love also, yeah, that the fact that they put music everywhere. Sometimes in the stores it's a bit too much again. I don't like in the onsens that they separate men and women, and that if you have a tattoo, which my girlfriend has, you can't go into an onsen. Those are the traditional Japanese baths with hot springs. There's no reason to still have that law. Why, if you have a tattoo, you're not a yakuza. Maybe that's the case in Japan, but it's just one of these stupid laws. And it's similar actually in Germany. Many things, it feels like, are still being done in a certain way because it's always been done this way. And then if somebody maybe asks, why don't we change this? The argument is, we've always done it this way. I don't like this way of thinking. It kind of hinders innovation, and it in many cases leads to a rigidity, which can be very limiting and yeah, bad actually in a way. There's no reason to make an onsen like this. Also some other stuff that is maybe a bit of a detail, but when you go to a sauna in an onsen, instead of you having a towel, there's a towel integrated into the sauna, which is attached to it. So basically you're all naked, and then you sit down in the puddle of sweat of the previous person who just sat down there. It's weird, right? And everything is has to be done in a certain way. And if you don't do it this way, you're getting ostracized probably. If you don't like bow down in a certain way, if you don't do this in a certain way. And there's probably some other examples which I can't think of. And if you listen to some expats, they will tell you that the bureaucracy is a nightmare. In many cases, actually, Japan is quite backwards, actually. When it also comes to immigration laws, it's really hard to get in there. When it comes to official documents, there's still stamps everywhere, so you have to put stamps on all these documents. The criminal system is weird. So basically, if you get accused of a crime, you just have to basically run away, I heard. Because if you get put into jail, you might get like a death penalty. You basically have no chance of getting like a fair trial. That's what I heard, I don't know. But there's some weird stuff as well. But aside from that, one point I forgot to mention, the cars. The cars are very different. It's not like really Toyota Prius or something. We all know Honda and Toyota and so on. But they have really cute small cars. One looks like a really small cute Jeep. One looks like a small cute mini car. And these are brands you don't even know really here. And even the models, you've never seen them. They have really small cute tires. They have cool colors like egg yellow and like a cool faded pastel green and purple and pink. I love the cute cars. I really would love to bring one back here. So in any case, everything the Japanese do is kind of different. All the kawaii stuff, of course, doing all the cool, cute little figures that they have everywhere. I think that's also cool, that you kind of commit to cuteness, that you really try to create cute, adorable things and moments. And that's something I love about Japan, even though some of the stuff they do is weird and could get annoying. Okay, finally I want to talk about the people, Japanese people. And I gotta say, it's crazy how different they are to the West, in a way, all in all. But also in many ways, I guess they're similar. And I guess maybe we're getting a bit closer with culture, with American films that they watch, and with anime that we watch. I don't know. But it's insane how respectful they are, how considerate they are for your space. It's a heaven for an introvert to be in Japan. I think personally, no Japanese person would ever get the idea to take a call on the train station, on the metro or something, in public transport. They don't scream, they're not loud. They really look to not cross your way. They bow down. They're insanely service oriented. So if you're in a restaurant or something, they will politely talk to you. They will bow down and everything. I don't say that we have to do it in the West as well. It's a bit too much for my personal taste sometimes. But it really does show that you as a customer, you're kind of like the king or whatever, which I personally, I don't want so much attention on me, but I do think it's nice if people make an effort to be friendly. It's the opposite of Germany. In Germany, you have to, like if you're in a clothing store, like the salesperson is just gonna scream at you or ignore you completely. And there it's really everybody, in general, if you enter a store, people just say hello to you and will try their best to help you as well. And so I would say in general, the amount of like politeness is crazy. And I do think it's nice in a way that you try to not get on other people's nerves, that you try to be respectful and try to adhere to certain standards when it comes to communication. And it feels like in Europe, this was the case back in the day more, that you would talk a bit in a certain way, that you would wear certain types of clothes. But it has changed, and now it's become kind of rough and kind of unfriendly and unpersonal, which I think is a bit sad. What's crazy too is in Tokyo or something, or in Japan in general, millions of people, like 80% of men that you see throughout the day have a suit on. So every salary man, but also other people, has a suit on, or if they don't have a suit on, they will have some kind of uniform, like some kind of, I don't know, 7-Eleven uniform, or some kind of movies uniform. Whatever their job is, they will either have a uniform or wear like some kind of, wear like a suit, which also you can find good or you can find bad. But still, now that I talked about this stuff, I have to come a bit to, I guess, the negatives or the I don't know part. I have to admit, I don't really know Japanese, because in the 3 weeks, I rarely was able to really have a real conversation with a Japanese. Sure, there's some people in a store. There was a really crazy lady who, like in a restaurant, who was talking to us quite a bit. But other than that, it just doesn't really organically happen that you talk to people. And one big reason for that is obviously language. It's insane how bad Japanese speak and understand English. Even if you go to the biggest touristy place, to the biggest restaurant, they will sometimes not even understand yes, no, and thank you, or meat or something. It's crazy. I don't know what happens in the school system. It's supposed to be so good. And I understand that you maybe just want to preserve your own language, but given the amount of tourists that come to Japan, how about you at least learn some English, like the basics? Like yes and no and perhaps and maybe and the stuff. Maybe it's really hard for them, I don't know, but that's maybe another aspect of Japanese doing things their own way, I don't know. But it's crazy. I had to use Google Translate for so many stuff. And I had to speak Japanese, actually. I don't know anything, but just from mangas, from watching One Piece, and Luffy always wanting to have niku, which is meat. Sometimes I had to explain that my girlfriend doesn't eat meat. I had to do niku. Instead of saying no meat, they're not going to comprehend no meat. What they understand is okay and no, okay and yes and no and thank you, they understand. But besides that, it's not going to work. So actually it's kind of helpful to it's probably helpful to learn some Japanese because they don't want to learn English. You say arigato gozaimasu, you turn niku, and hi. I don't know anything honestly, but sometimes I actually try to speak Japanese instead of doing this just because people just have such a hard time. So that's one reason, but also it feels like it's really closed off in a way. Even if you were to speak Japanese, I think it must probably be really hard to really get to know them because they really have their in-group of friends. They probably have their colleagues with whom they go to have a drink after work. They work most of the time anyways. So I think living in Japan must be kind of tough, and I'm pretty convinced that it isn't for me, even though I love Japan. And if I was famous like PewDiePie, maybe I would move to Japan as well, because people are just not gonna annoy him. But I'm under no illusion that I would easily find friends there. I think it's super hard. I'm not saying it's impossible. Everything is possible. I'm just saying I think it's extremely hard. Also, let's be real. I think Japan is a pretty racist country. Every country is racist in some way. But even if you're only half Japanese, if you look, I don't know, if one of your parents is European or something, they're gonna call you like hafu or something and treat you differently. And if you're Westerner, you're always gonna be kind of an outsider because the country is so homogenous. You have like, I don't know, 1-2% foreigners, and that a lot of them are expats who leave again. And sometimes I watch some YouTube channels of some guys doing interviews also with expats, and they generally say that it's really hard to get to know Japanese, to have a mixing of friend groups. And yeah, I think that's unfortunate a bit. I would enjoy talking to Japanese more, but also realistically, I'm probably not gonna become an expert Japanese speaker. So I'm never really gonna be able to have a deep conversation with most Japanese. The only times is like a drunk Japanese who basically kind of tried to hit on my girlfriend or something. That's the only thing that once happened, I think. And yeah, sometimes when the Japanese get drunk, if they have like a few beers, they start to become more talkative, but not always like in a super cool way, but in a kind of like a drunk way, like making weird jokes and laughing too much. We had a few friendly guys, I don't want to be too mean, who tried their best. But then again, it was usually when people are drunk and they're a bit obnoxious, and then suddenly they become a bit less Japanese and a bit more loud, then maybe you don't necessarily want to talk to them anymore. Also, and I think that's one of the biggest reasons why I probably couldn't live in Japan, people, I think, are too uniform in how they think and how they behave. I think in a way everybody is indoctrinated in a way, but the way that Japanese are being indoctrinated is on a whole other level. The fact that they just all behave the same, all dress the same, that women all almost, it seems that way, are kind of have this personality that they're pretty shy and like very womanly and never loud and brash and out there. You could say that's good, and I like it as an introvert, but then again, it feels very stifling. It feels very limiting. And I think it's a bit unfortunate, and I think a country like this can never be truly creative. They can be great at incremental innovations, but they can never really be free, say what's on their mind. And yeah, so many things that the Japanese just don't seem to question, like the fact that they work all the time. I mean, sure that there's like the hikokomori and everything, but the fact that they work all the time, that women usually marry and stay at home or have a job which is hard to advance at, and that you eat food in a certain way, that you, I don't know, live a certain way. I think that's a bit stifling. However, I feel like in some sense, Japan is a bit more egalitarian than the West. I haven't really seen that many big mansions and everything, and not that many people flaunting their wealth. It feels like a lot of salaried men have closer together salaries, and they're happy maybe with a simpler life in a small apartment. I don't know exactly. And in some way, I also feel like it's maybe not so bad that this, like, it's the question collectivism versus individualism. I would say America is a very individualistic country. Japan is a very collectivist country. Germany probably more on the collectivistic side as well, which has advantages maybe for cohesion and for uniformity, but also can lead to terrible things, also to wars and to to people just marching in one direction without really questioning if this is the right thing. So again, it's a bit of a nuanced, complex topic. I'm not really sure what the right solution here is, but then again, I think I do lean a bit more on the freedom side and maybe going my own way and maybe being a bit different. I do like that in some way. I'm overgeneralizing, of course. Everything I say, again, there are exceptions. Yeah, that's not something I have to say. Also, to be honest, the apartments that the Japanese sometimes live in, I watch Paulo in Tokyo and everything, they're pretty small. And I'm not sure if this is always the case. I think apparently in some villages you can live cheaply, but also I don't feel like remote work is something that they do. I feel like going to the office, wearing a suit, they're very dutiful and conscientious. And this is something that's so trained into them, like the perfect Pavlovian dog, that you can't train this out of them. But sometimes some people, I think, don't feel that well, and this is why the suicide rates are quite high, because they feel I don't belong in this very rigid pattern of how I'm supposed to function. I don't see another way of living either. This is why I choose to end my life. It almost feels like a rational choice, but it's something that scares me a bit as well. Another point which I think about quite a bit and almost I think is most fascinating about Japan is that they do seem to think differently in some fundamental way, and it's hard for me to put my finger on how exactly they think differently. But it's obvious, right, from their history and how they were kind of closed up. But when you watch, for instance, some art, anime, if you play a game made by Japanese, some stuff is just always weird. Even the storytelling is always a bit weird. And I can name millions of examples. But there are so many anime which are great, actually, like action-wise, and the characters are interesting. But sure, that's also art made for young people, but there's always these cringy elements, like why does it always have to be like a high school? Sure, I think this was the time which was the most like chilled, like I think this was the most peaceful and interesting time where you had the most going on, you were flirting maybe with some classmates. I think this is why the Japanese idolize like their high school time so much, but that's a small excursus, as we like to say. But still, at some point the story gets weird. The storytelling is weird. It's not good. It's just not that good, to be honest, sometimes. From my perspective, the Japanese maybe find it really good. But even, what's this famous author called? Murakami, I think. The books are confusing, but also I would say not good in a way that there's necessarily real red line that you can follow. Like it's not logical. Something is missing. Maybe it's our own Western bias that we have from Brothers Grimm, which told us like the fairy tales, and got raised on a certain type of storytelling which got used by Hollywood and Disney films. But the way that the Japanese tell stories is just different, and the way they talk is just different. They use different words more often, like sorry and maybe, and just fundamentally their brain is wired differently. So that I would almost say I have more in common with somebody from South America, or maybe like somebody from Brazil or somebody from Russia, as opposed to somebody from Japan. And this becomes quite apparent in this regard, but also some many other things, which is weird. I mean, some games, like I played this game when I was there, it's called Fire Emblem Engage or something. It's some kind of strategy, which I do like on the Switch. But the story was so horrific, so childish, and everything is like, oh, let us drink some tea. And in storytelling, the methods they use are a bit cheap in many ways, I find. It's like, oh, my father died, my mother died, oh, I love my parents, oh, I love my sister, and my sister died. It's always like trying to push buttons to create an emotional reaction in you. You will find this in a lot of Japanese media. And I love Japanese media in some way because I love animation, I love the music in it, I love the gameplay, obviously, but the storytelling is just weird. It's just not that good, and also it's very childish. It's like the social skills of the Japanese got stuck in high school age, and maybe the media I'm consuming is targeted at younger kids. Maybe that's the reason. I have no idea, but maybe I haven't found this stuff yet for real adults. But even Elden Ring, in a way, is kind of weird story. It doesn't make any sense. But again, it's just weird, and it feels autistic in a weird way. I don't know how else to describe it as opposed to, I don't know if you know people with autism, but it feels like all of Japan has a high degree of autism. Also, their sexuality and the way flirting works with them, it seems quite autistic. I don't know how else to put it. In a way, sometimes when you listen to interviews or something, they're quite honest about like their feelings, and they talk quite openly about stuff. But then again, it's quite autistic. I don't know how else to put it. It lacks, or kind of like Asperger's, it lacks like subtlety. The humor is different. It's more on the nose. It's different, and that again shows me I couldn't be part of this society because I'm different. Just my core values, my sense of humor, the stuff that I resonate with. It would be super hard to connect in this way with a Japanese. I don't know this for a fact. This is just a hypothesis of mine, right? But yeah, again, I still do love Japan. With everything I said, I had some of the best weeks in my life in Japan. It just feels different, and maybe sometimes when I was there, I remember especially the last days in Tokyo, there was just too many people, and I missed like Switzerland a bit. But now that I'm back in Switzerland, I do miss Japan a bit again, because yeah, the food, the cities, the people, the art, it's just a different universe, and in many ways like a better universe, a better dream reality. But then again, I also know I couldn't live there, so it's a bit mixed. And I think in some fundamental ways, I feel like the gap between me or us and Japan is just too big almost. But maybe that's also me being a bit over dramatic. I'm super grateful for all the stuff that the Japanese create. I mean, some of my favorite stuff, like even now Zelda, Breath of the Wild, and now Tears of the Kingdom. It just launched basically, and I bought it. I haven't played it yet, but I already know that I'm gonna love it. Or even Elden Ring. I think probably it's my favorite game of all times. I like it a lot. Or Octopath Traveler, also an amazing game with a weird cheesy story again. So again, the storytelling, it's way too cheesy, it's too on the nose. But that's a big topic. I don't know why I'm so obsessed with the storytelling topic, but I can't really put my finger onto why I feel like it's so cringy. I think that's something, I wanted to say as well. The Japanese, they're not really that cool, and maybe we're cringy as well in some way in the West because we always want to be cool. I don't know when this started. I think this maybe with the influence of like African American culture in the US, it became more important to be cool, have cool clothes, talk in a certain way, be kind of aloof and stoic. The Japanese kind of have none of that, it feels like. I mean, sure, there's some cool Japanese people, but in general, I think what they think is cool, we would think of as quite cringy in some way. Another example would be the game Persona 5. which I played a bit, where there's this guy who calls himself, I don't even know how he calls himself, like Joker. He calls himself Joker, and he has like this cool Joker mask, and he's like, I'm a bandit, cool, 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 cool. And he has like this group of course it's in high school again, this weird pervy thing, but it's like, oh, I'm the Joker, I'm special. And honestly, I do feel like the Japanese think he's a cool character, but I find him to be not cool at all. Not cool at all. I mean, I don't know. And it's kind of like, I don't know. Just imagine the most normie, white, Ivy League guy with glasses on, like myself. Some boring guy suddenly trying to be like a rapper or something. It's usually kind of cringy, right? That's kind of what the Japanese are. No, I don't know. But they kind of lack this kind of understanding of what we might consider to be cool, as opposed to like South America. For them, it's quite natural to them, or Turkey or something, or some Eastern European, Arabic countries. They're kind of cool by nature, it feels like, and African countries. But the Japanese, not so much. I think also it's probably due to their school system, where you're very polite and very like, yes, 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 yes. I think even the biggest, like the coolest guy, who could it be, like some kind of motorbike rocker or something, who is in a gang, would probably still be polite and bow down to you in some restaurant or something, which is nice in some way, right? But it's kind of weird too. So yeah, again, I might be wrong with my assessment in some way, but if you haven't been to Japan, I can really recommend you go there. I personally love it, and you don't have to love anime or something to love it. Just the food alone, I think, is amazing. If you're a vegetarian, maybe think twice about it, but then again, go visit it. Just go to any place, it doesn't really matter. Don't go to the beautiful touristy spots, go to any place. It's gonna feel like a different universe. I think you're gonna love it as well. I hope so. And I can say I love it. And it's cool that I live in a world where such a country exists. I'm really grateful for it. And after the terrible, okay, that's one thing I want to mention as well. That's not so cool about Japan. They're not honest about their past, as opposed to Germans, who in school are very keen on teaching the horrors of both world wars and the rest that Germany did wrong. The Japanese, they don't even think about it. They don't talk about it. For them, what? Atrocities during World War II, what they did when they invaded China and North Korea. They're basically some of the worst stories you can ever think of. Basically, mass rapes, throwing prisoners into boiling water. I mean, the worst stuff you can think of, and they just deny it in some sense. So that's another example how they're smart people, but then again, because of their crazy conditioning and brainwashing, you could call it, they're not gonna really question this kind of stuff, which is pretty insane to me and not that great. So this kind of shows you the dark side of this collectivism and this very strict, narrow way of thinking and doing things. But then again, if you don't believe me, check out the channel on YouTube, Paolo in Tokyo. I think it's amazing. Just watch like firemen or some salaryman or any kind of person and see how structured their life is, how seriously they take their jobs. I think that's admirable. I think it's beautiful. I actually love it. And again, I'm really glad that a country like Japan exists, which I think like below this facade of strictness, there's a lot of richness there, like a lot of love for art and beauty and amazing food and these amazing chords they use in their music and these beautiful visual things they create when they paint or when they create video games or when they create mangas and visual novels. It's a lot of beauty there, right? They appreciate beauty, and that's something that's amazing. And maybe that's their freedom, I mean their creativity, where it comes from, because it's being suppressed in daily life, maybe to some extent. There's lots of it like coming out, and it's beautiful, and it's actually, I love it. I think it's great. go continue do what you do in Japan. And yeah, that was it. Thank you so much. Goodbye.